Each time there is a contamination in food or beverages, the public is made aware. What they don't see is you, mitigating risks every day, taking difficult decisions and making our food as safe as possible. Because you take your job as seriously as we do. With over 350 years experience in highly regulated industries, we understand the importance of reliability and efficiency in your lab. So be it to verify existing methods, stay on top of changing regulations, or to adopt the newest technologies, you can find it all on sigmaaldrich.com. Tailored products for each step of your workflow available on our website. We have products that are suitable for microbial and analytical needs in the crucial step of sample preparation. For example catchers, for pesticide analysis on difficult sample matrices like leafy greens. We have solutions for the most routine sample analysis to advanced genetic detection, such as the Assurance GDS for rapid pathogen detection, often used to test for E. coli in beef. And we support you with a complete set of services and specialists. Our experts are here to improve your day-to-day work with 4 dedicated portfolio brands: Millipore, Sapelco, Sigma Aldrich, and MilliQ. All these products can easily be ordered on our website so that you can focus on making sure that every sip, every bite is safe because it's been tested by you.
From India. I, Prachi Arora from Benison Media, welcome you all to today's webinar on Indian Dairy Outlook by 2030. This is the third webinar of Dairy Webinar series organized by Benison Media in association with Your Brokery. Today's webinar is sponsored by Merck and Reliance Industries. So before discussing on 2030, let us see where the Indian dairy industry is standing today. The milk production in India is approximately 187 metric million tons. This is the 2019 figures. The cattle feed production is around 9.5 metric million tons, and the processing capacity of the country is 53.5 metric million tons. As per Niti Aayog report of 2018, by 2030, the milk production of the country is expected to reach 255 metric million tons. As per Benison Media estimates, the cattle feed production might be 15 metric million tons. And as per Your Brokery estimates, the processing capacity might reach 155 metric million tons. Let's see what our experts say about these 2030 projections. But firstly, let me brief you about this platform. You may use the chat box to interact with your fellow participants, and also you may share your questions with us, which will be discussed in the interactive session with our experts. After the webinar, you will also have an opportunity to interact with our milk quality experts. And if you wish, you can also interact with them in the chat box and fix a meeting. During the webinar, we will be having audience poll. You may please participate and share your opinion with us. Now, let me welcome the moderator of the session, who is a renowned face for Indian dairy industry, Mr. Shiva Moodgill. He's a senior research analyst for dairy and poultry, director for Rebo Research Food and Agri Business. He has been working with Rebo Bank India, covering the food and agri sectors for more than 10 years now. Prior to Rebo Bank, he has also worked with Gujarat Cooperative Milk Marketing Federation and Reliance Industries in the dairy and retail business. Welcome, Shiva, and over to you.
Thanks, Prachi and Prashant, for organizing the webinar, and a very warm welcome to all of the participants, including panelists and the audience. Well, as Prachi mentioned initially, so what we are looking at in current year, it has been a roller coaster journey for Indian dairy industry. In fact, for many of the food and agri sectors during the COVID-19 crisis. And dairy, as I see, amongst other sectors, hasn't been that impacted. Of course, it has seen some impact, but if you look at food services and poultry, still it has been able to do much better. Yes, there have been serious impact in some parts of the value chain, some channels in the sector, clearly, which will take time to recover. So we are actually going to talk about the long-term situation or future of Indian dairy in the current session, how we see in 2030 situation emerging, leading up to 2030, and major transformation in the sector. It's linked to supply chain or consumer trends, wherein we are looking at some business responses to tackle those challenges going forward, and what are the kind of new emerging trends. Let me first introduce the panel here, our esteemed panel. So first of all, we have Uday Tiwari from Genex Cooperative, and Uday is working as Director India Operation for Genex Cooperative. It's also known as CRI in its earlier avatar, one of the leading companies in the bovine genetics. And before that, Uday has worked in ABS Genus, another of global bovine genetics player in the industry. Before that, he has also worked with IIL, Indian Immunologicals Limited, part of National Dairy Development Board. Welcome, Uday, for this webinar. Then we have Dr. Dinesh Auti from Baramati Agro. Yeah. So Dr. Dinesh is in the sales department of feed, in fact, on the animal feed side of Baramati Agro Limited. And he has an experience of more than 20 years in the field of animal feed, which spans through cattle feed, aqua feed, and also poultry feed. He is a veterinarian by background and earlier worked with Natural Remedies, Suguna Foods, and Uttara Foods. So welcome, Dr. Dinesh Oti, for this webinar. Then we have Kumud Ashish Singh from Mark Life Sciences. Kumud is a microbiologist by background, and she is leading the regulatory management for food and beverages and environmental testing at Merck Life Sciences for APAC APAC region. She has more than 15 years of work experience in manufacturing and corporate roles in many of the FMCG companies. Amongst them, she has worked at Mars International, Coca-Cola India, and also at Pepsi Foods. Welcome, Kumud, for this seminar. Then we welcome Sanjeev Shrivastava from Bell Group. Bell is a French-based specialty cheese company. So Sanjeev is a sales director at Bell Group, which is into selling different kind of exotic specialty cheese across the world. They are also selling in India. Prior to working with Bell, Sanjeev has worked with Umang Dairies, also General Mills, Godrej Hershey's, and Parle Agro. Welcome, Sanjeev, for this forum. We have Rajiv Kumar from Reliance Industries Limited, and Rajiv is the Market Development Manager at Reliance Industries Limited. He is a polymer expert, as a background of masters in polymer technology, more than 20 years of work experience, responsible for pet product and development applications, and also in sustainability applications. And he has also worked in the research and development side, and also the launch and the commercialization of many of the pet and rPET products in India. Finally, we have Anup Singh from Solera Advisors. So Anup is the principal at Solera, and he has worked at corporate setup for many years, and now he has started his own venture. So before Solera, he was director hedge and financial planning at Cabot Creamery Cooperative, and also he has worked at Golden Agri and Sapient previously. Welcome, Anup and Rajiv, on this webinar. So I welcome you all for this panel discussion. Let me just give you a brief background on from my side as a moderator, what actually has happened in 2020 and how we are looking at future leading up to 2030. So I will not take much of time. It's not a presentation, so will be brief, but bear with me. So if you look at current situation, and as we started the year, and we have seen a turmoil in the industry, not only in dairy, but in overall food and agri situation globally and in India. And as initially mentioned, dairy has seen impact. Being part of essential commodity, it has actually had some you can say benefit in terms of supply chain maintenance. At least as a consumer, we have been receiving liquid milk at our household or even delivering to nearby neighborhood store, which we haven't seen for many of the other products, including food and other stuff. So clearly that way we have seen some kind of mitigant for dairy industry, but there has been a significant impact in some part of the value chain, also on some product categories and in some channels also. So if we talk about channel itself, starting with B2B, we have seen significant impact on food services and institutional sale. Initially, during lockdown, during Corona, immediately like March end and leading up to June first week when the unlocking started, we had significant impact on B2B. We still have some impact. It's in the recovery mode, and we look at maybe fully recovery or near to normal recovery by end of March next year. That also depends on how the infection will be contained. But still, I think it's clearly on recovery path. At least we look at online delivery model that is growing in India, or in fact, looking at different kind of options on the retail side also coming in, or digitization of the value chain is happening. So clearly there is a lot of new channels are emerging, which are leading to some kind of benefit, or maybe you can say shift towards strategy, shift in strategy for some of the business stakeholders. So this is what we have seen on the B2B side. B2C is clearly getting benefited over time. Immediately after lockdown, there was immediate impact, supply chain disruptions, logistics issues, labor shortages. So that actually led to some issues in product reaching to the retail stores or mom and pop stores. But over the time, after unlocking in June, we have seen significant steady growth coming in the retail side. More and more consumer-led retail growth is happening on the dairy side. Particularly if you look at packaged liquid milk, we are seeing growth. At home consumption is increasing. We are looking at growth in UHT, basically convenient categories, ready to eat, ready to drink, and ready to cook. Those kind of segments are growing at home, at household level. So those kind of segments we have seen growth. A few of the impacted categories, of course, cheese linked to food services. So half of the sales are coming in from food services. So we have seen significant impact on cheese sales initially, like at least 3 to 6 months. In the first and second quarter, there was a significant impact, though it's recovering now, as I mentioned, for food services. So it will take some time for the cheese B2B or food service part to recover. However, on the B2C side, there has been good growth over last year. Ice cream, another impulse category. So we have seen that kind of segment getting a major impact during the initial first 2 quarters. A bit of recovery happening on that front. Lastly, on skim milk powder side, so if you look at the supply chain disruptions leading to some of the companies now moving towards durable products. So a lot of skim milk powder and ghee is being manufactured. And so we have seen SMP inventory being built up in India. So that will remain a bit of challenge in terms of how to dispose of. I think that's going to be one of the industry possible concern going forward, how to look at maybe an outlet in export side, which is right now some of the companies are discussing. In fact, one of the state governments have already given subsidy for that. So those kind of things, I think, may help to some extent in creating some kind of channel for selling skim milk powder that could be benefiting the industry. So this is on the demand side. A brief on supply, and like what I mentioned on disruptions happening on the downstream. So upstream also we have seen some changes happening. So informal to formal market transition has been happening in India, from intermediaries, individuals towards corporates, private companies and cooperatives. And during the COVID time, lockdown time, there has been a severe disruption at the farm level in terms of intermediaries going out of the business. So farmers were not having any option but to go to private dairy company and cooperative village collection point. And in fact, some of these companies are flush with milk during that time with raw milk. So that transition actually has been happening at the farm level. We have seen some recovery at informal channel. Some of the intermediaries now coming back in the market. So, but again, what we are looking at, it's slow, delayed and partial recovery. So this is going to benefit basically more of the large players or integrators having direct touch points at farm level, cooperatives and large private companies having direct engagement with farmers. So this is on the supply side. And like Prachi mentioned initially, around 187 million tons, what we looked at in 2019 FY 2019. So we are looking at still crossing 200 million tons by the end of this year, by March end. So basically, roughly around 3% growth last year, and roughly around 3% or maybe slightly less than that this year as well, in spite of the issues that we have seen. Supply, of late, we have seen a bit of tightness because farmer prices have gone down. Earlier, they were ruling at around, if I look at an example of Maharashtra, more than 30 rupees per liter during the peak times, like in January. And it came down to around 21, 20 rupees per liter around April, May. And now it's around 24, 25 rupees for many months, actually. In between, it has gone up, but again, stabilized around 25 rupees per liter. So farmers haven't got that kind of realization as what they received early this year or late last year. So there has been a bit of change in the basic feeding pattern to the animal. So kind of very basic feed given to them, leading to reduced milk yield and reduced milk production at the onset of flush season this year. Unlike what we see in normally every year, flush season starts with a bang. It hasn't been the case this time. So a bit of slight tightness in milk supplies, but we are right now into the flush. So we see still milk supply building up, and that will actually lead up to more and more possibly powder inventory coming in. So that's linked to the powder prices. Initially 320 to 350 rupees per kg when we were looking at January. In fact, we were in deficit that time, and some of the industry stakeholders were speaking to the government to allow import of powder. However, within few months, it has turned upside down. Prices actually went down by 50% and around 170, 160 rupees. Now it's hovering between 170 to 195 rupees. Again, basically a slight uplift because of tightness in the raw milk side. But again, I do think that prices will remain around this side unless we see some outlet coming in, possibly in export that we are still looking at as an option. Maybe it will be in the next quarter. So that may lead to slight upliftment of powder prices in the market in the next quarter or by the end of next quarter. So this is on the supply side. Prices also I have mentioned. A few trends I will just talk about briefly. So transition from informal to formal I discussed, will not go much into detail. Now we are looking at integration and consolidation also. So integration in the sense that now we see there have been challenges for the companies who are largely focused on B2B. So now there is a concerted effort to focus on B2C side to develop retail infrastructure, distribution network, developing your own brand, getting into diversified portfolio, including value-added dairy products. So this is how we are looking at on the downstream side, the changes coming in, the transition or the trend coming in. If you look at backward side on the upstream, so clearly we are looking at more farmer engagement. This was kind of happening in the last 5 years, 10 years, we have seen this kind of activity at formal level, but it has actually taken a more, you can say, it's happening at a more quick rate now compared to what we have seen in previous years. So we will see more of these corporates, companies looking to invest in procurement infrastructure at farm level, developing their linkage at farm level, also getting input service provider with them, including feed, nutrition, genetics, or healthcare services. So this is going to actually create more integration, more collaborated approach at supply chain level between the dairy processors and also the supply chain providers, including service providers, to support farmers and also to look at tapping new consumers for value-added dairy products. A few points on consumer trends. Work from home is more accepted at in the cities. We can see even in tier 2, tier 3, many of the cities, it's an accepted trend now at employer level, at employee level. So we do see this trend coming as in retaining its importance in coming years. And that will drive the role of convenient category for all the food products, including dairy. So what I initially mentioned, ready to drink, ready to eat, ready to cook kind of segment, comfort, convenient segment will grow. Nutrition, hygiene, safe, all this word put together, I think that's going to be a new focus area for many of the companies in terms of channel, in terms of delivery, in terms of product. So I believe in the packaging segment is also going to get benefited. More of processing towards value-added segment will drive innovation. That will also lead to packaging innovations as well. So this is actually going to get a trend towards wherein we'll see more business response coming in from the industry. E-commerce transformation supply chain is another part we are looking at. So it's not true only for dairy, for many of the segment that we have seen. So in the dairy side, we have seen some companies actually having third-party partnership for driving their last mile approach, or having their own online setup to reach to the farmers directly. So these kind of to the industry, to the consumers. So this is basically we are looking at different kind of approaches to reach consumers. So this is in a nutshell about 2020. Just a few points on 2030 before we will go to the panel. And 2030, we are looking at, I mentioned about demand side. So we'll go with demand, looking at strong growth again, and discounting this year, strong demographic, whether to do with increasing per capita income or strong demographic part, strong demographic and economic prospects. So per capita, or it can be urbanization, or it can be basically young consuming population in India. So we do see more and more growth happening for demand side for dairy products. So that's going to remain for next 5 to 10 years. Supply, as I mentioned, investment in procurement infrastructure will be key. So we have seen that kind of push coming in, and this COVID crisis, unfortunately, in a way, but ultimately it will be driving more focus from the corporates to focus more on investment in procurement infrastructure. I will see more private investment coming in this side across India in different locations. Finally, on the trend side, the part that I just mentioned, so focus on quality products is going to lead companies to have an integrated approach. So this will lead to more sustainable approach in terms of finding solutions at farm level, working in collaboration with service providers, solution providers, and finally finding different channels to tap consumers. So this is in a nutshell, we are looking at how the market would be going to be up to 2030. Numbers may vary in terms of different estimates. So we'll not go much into how much numbers will be achieving in 2030. But we are looking at a positive growth and positive situation scenario for Indian dairy industry leading up to 2030. So this is what I think of. Now we will go to our panel. And first of all, I will start off, we will go with better to go with the upstream side. So we will start with Mr. Uday Tiwari, and he will be going to provide inputs on the genetic side. So we're looking forward to hear from him about the impact on genetics in future and how genetics development will drive the growth in Indian dairy industry, both at farm level and ultimately into the value addition at the consumer level. Uday, over to you.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Shiva, for your in-depth analysis. And perhaps you also gave some brief as to what is being said about or by Shiva, you have been talking about the procurement infrastructure and investment of procurement. Despite your in-depth analysis, nobody seems to be talking about the production side, how the farmers are suffering. What is their plan in future to cater to the demand? Niti Aayog is saying we will be producing 230 million metric ton by the end of 2030 or by 2030. But are they talking as per current scenario, coming year scenario, or their past experience? The current scenario is a little scary. To my estimate, the demand will be 200 million metric ton, which will be finding it difficult to cater as per the NDDB figure of 177 million metric ton production today. You need to have more number of people coming into the farming, or more number of lead production per animal has to come out, or we have to go for consolidation, or we have to have the government support. This is a little big area to think about. How we are going to get this additional 23 million metric ton in next 10 years to come. Very easy solution. I was talking to one of the ministers. Will increase the number of animals. But is that the solution? Or are we going to think about getting more milk from the less animals? Because human population is exploding. 2030, I think we are going to be the largest population of all the countries in the world. India is going to have the largest population. And then we increase the cattle population also. Where do we find a little land to move around, to build our houses? So the solution is get more milk from less. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. So my question was, or 2 points to ponder was, can the earth take load of more cattle population along with increase in human population? Of course, no. The second point to think about is the crossbred population is growing by 27%, and the indigenous breed is going less by 6%. This is despite the effort of the government to push the indigenous breeds, because the farmer's choice is very clear. They like to go for something gives them more with little expenditure or little investment. So we were talking about, because I have been given a subject to speak on the genetics. The role of genetics is in growing productivity. And if you have better genetics to select from, you get early maturity of the offsprings. They come to production early. The intercalving interval for those offsprings tomorrow is going to be reduced. They fall less thick, and the milk is better in quality, and higher in quantity. And this is possible only through genetics. I can quote example. I think Shiva was talking about the low procurement price, about the high production cost also. I'll give you two examples. Punjab, with a cost is almost 18 to 20 rupees for the organized dairy farms which are using good genetics. Where the cost of production has gone 32 rupees or maybe 35 rupees in some cases. In Telangana, I was hearing from one of the farmers. They are using the best practices for nutrition, management. They have very huge farms. Their barn is worth seeing. But the only thing they have not done is selection of good genetics. And when the cost of production goes high and the cost of procurement, the price of procurement goes down, then think of this situation, how we are going to catch to the demand of milk requirement tomorrow. Difficult situation. We are in a precarious difficult situation wherein the producers, the dairy farmers, they say their farm is generated. Should they stay in the business? And the consumer, they say, hey, every 6 months there is an increase in the MRP in the milk. So how do we cater? Today we may be having good amount of SMP with us, but think of tomorrow. When this SMP cost go high, import. And if you start importing, then the remaining dairy industry will also go out. So we need to go for superior genetics, which can give you better calves to produce more with the less number. Another scenario I was thinking about, it is very clearly established here that the farmer's choice in India is to go for crossbred or exotic breed. But which breed in the exotic breed? Internationally, we are seeing that Jersey is a breed which we need to watch for. Internationally, or if I quote example of USA, the Jersey is growing by 6% every year, and Holstein, the most popular breed in USA, is going negative because they find that Jersey is the one breed which is very friendly. It doesn't create a lot of nuisance on the farm. It occupies less space. The space is becoming a big challenge now. How to accommodate the number of animals I have in my farm. They are disease resistant. They are having higher fat content. Feed conversion ratio is much better, and they consume less feed and water. Water is going to be another problem for us in dairy farming, and everywhere the farmers, they are being asked question that how much water you are consuming and how can you reduce the intake of water in your farm. So that's a big challenge which can be answered by Jersey animals only. So I see a big future with Jersey animals. Incidentally, in India so far, we have not concentrated on Jersey. We have gone more for Holstein Friesian, but the timing is coming. I know many farmers in Punjab again. A friend of mine, Daljit Singh, who is president for PDFA, He used to be all-out fan of only Holston, but I was surprised to see the other day when I went to his farm that he has over 100 Jersey animals in his farm. And when I asked him question, how this shift came, he said, because I have to earn money. And I find that Jersey is giving me more money in comparison to Holston. So this is one breed which we have to watch for by 2030. My forecast or my estimate for 2030 is that the milk demand is going to increase manifold, because in any country where the income level is high, it is witnessed that the demand more of the milk and milk product. So in India also, we are growing and we need to have more liters of milk per day. Dairy farming is going to be highly profitable because I see not only domestic demand, once it becomes affordable, our cost of production is low and the consumer price goes down, then more number of people will be demanding more liters of milk. But also the neighboring countries, if you go to SAARC countries and see, they are buying almost 60 to 80% of their local requirement from European countries. So here's the point. If we produce quality milk, we can cater to the neighboring countries also, because logistically it will be much easier for them to procure from India. Then there is a value for genetics. Earlier, I used to ask the farmers, hey, where did you use your semen from? Or which breed or which type of animal you have used semen from? They used to say, no, I don't know anything. I got my cow pregnant and that's all. But now, thanks to Punjab, that the farmers in India, they have started understanding the value of genetics and they are trying to go for better and better genetics available in the country. Backyard farming is going to be drastically diminished because either you are organized dairy farmer or you are not. The old-fashioned farming of having a cow or two is not going to be existing in next 10 years to come. Number of cows, like many advanced dairy countries, will be reduced because the animals will be producing more with better genetics, and the farmer's choice will of course move towards crossbred and exotic cows. No more indigenous breed for any professional dairy farmers. This is what I feel is for 2030 coming up. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Uday, for your inputs. I will invite Dr. Dinesh Auti now from Baramati Agro to provide his inputs on the other aspect. You talked about genetics, so we are looking at feed side now. Dr. Dinesh.
To start with, I would like to focus, first of all, make you aware about the world feed industry. If you will see, as each and every speaker was talking about, that the growing human population is encouraging that food demand and animal source of food are more preferred in developing countries also. And to satisfy the hunger of those animals, now the feed production has reached to 1 billion tons if we see on the world side, which is around US dollar 400 billion. And as per FAO estimates, by 2050, the demand for food will grow by 60%. And if this is true, then the requirement will be quadruple in 2050 for the feed also. So keeping this in mind, if we will go to India, so coming to India, I'm just trying to give you the passing reference of the current livestock population according to the 20th livestock census, which is completed in 2019, which is more recent and more relevant with the 2020. So if you will see, the 535 million is the total livestock population in India, which is increasing with the growth rate of 4.6%. As compared to the livestock census of 2012, whereas the bovine population, basically cattle, buffalo, which is important for our milk production, is 302 millions in 2019, which has shown an increase of 1% over the previous census. If we will go deeper, the livestock population with the major species, here we can see that there is a growth. The total livestock population, if you will divide cattle are contributing around 36%. Goats are contributing. Interestingly, goats and sheep put together are more than any other species, which is around 40%. And buffaloes are for 21% and pigs are 1.69. It means that in livestock population, major contribution is from the cattle and buffaloes. So as Tiwari sir was telling and Mr. Shiva was also discussing about, the exotic crossbreed population is growing and nondescript or the indigenous cattle breed population is degrowing in India. If you will see, there is also, if you will see the whole population, the exotic crossbreed is also showing there is a degrow. But the milch cattle from the exotic crossbreed is growing. If you will see the table number 2, you can see that there is a 39% change, 39.8% in milch breed crossbreds, and in 32% over the previous census, and nondescript are marginally increased by 0.8%, which is clearly showing that the farmers are preferring high yielding cows, maybe Jersey, maybe Holstein, but the crossbred cow population is growing. And the second, the largest consumer of ready-made pelleted compound feed is poultry. If you will see, the whole poultry is growing by 16.81%, whereas the backyard poultry, now this backyard poultry, I think this is consists of the indigenous, not the indigenous, but the color birds also. So it is showing growth of around 45.78%, and commercial poultry is growing at a pace of 4.5%. So that now finally the commercial poultry population has came to 534 million. Next. And the third one is buffalo, sheep, and goat population. Buffaloes are growing. Buffaloes has grown by 1% over previous census, and remaining milch breeds. So if you will take only milch breed growth, it is 6% over the last previous census. Sheep and goat, we'll see the sheep are growing by 14% and the goats are growing by the 10.1%. Now this passing reference why I have given, because we can see clearly that there is a growth in livestock population of India right from 2012 to 2019. And coming to the core of feed, the feed industry is projected to grow by 898 billion by 2024. With I can give the reference of IMARC group. They have published one report under the Indian animal feed market, and the CAGR calculated till time is 14% for overall animal feed industry. If commercial feed we categorize, the 60 to 65% is catered by the poultry, then aqua is catering for 6 to 8%, and dairy is 10 to 15%. And if we combine all put together, animal feed industries means all put together, we are producing 25 to 27 million metric tons of animal feed in current scenario. That is 720 billion worth value INR, which is 12%. And out of this 720 billion, means this total 720 billion is generated with only 12% of organized players who are producing this. On the geographical front, South India is the leading animal feed market, where the Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu, basically they are contributing higher on the poultry side, and northern part of India is contributing higher on the cattle side. This is one report. I have taken this figure from one of the report, and here we can see the organized sector. The poultry is contributing 63%, cattle is 31%, and aqua is 6%. Out of aqua 6%, 50% is fish feed and shrimp feed. And in this, 16 to 17 million metric ton is feed production for poultry, 7 to 8 million metric ton for cattle, and 0.7 to 0.8 million metric ton for fish, and for shrimp it is 0.9 to 1 million metric ton. And here the CAGR is given for financial year 2017 to 2020 is poultry 14 to 15%, cattle 10 to 11%, and aqua 4 to 5%. And shrimp is growing very faster, that too on the coastal region. That is, venomized shrimps are grown, and it is by 12 to 13% growth CAGR is seen. And if we keep in mind the CAGR mentioned there and calculate with the coming 5 years and 10 years, that is 2025 and 2030, the poultry we will be producing around 32.73 million metric ton, and cattle will be 14 million metric ton, aqua 2.6 metric tons. All put together, we will be producing 49.70 million metric ton. Today we are producing 27 million metric ton, and we will be producing around 49 million metric ton in 2025. If we will take the same CAGR, then in 2030 it will be 19.1 million metric ton. So if you will see in the percentage, growth percentage, it will be approximately twice than what currently we are doing in 2025, and it will be 2.5 times in 2030. This is with the help of only organic growth of livestock population in India. There is no any bigger factor which will increase the demand for the cattle or the livestock feed in India. And the growth drivers for the animal feed industry, the already we have discussed about the animal protein consumption, which is increasing. That is, poultry and aqua means poultry and fish consumption is increasing. There is a widening demand gap in green fodder, because already Tiwari sir was talking about some of the breeds which are taking more feed and fodder and water, but farmers are more interested in growing them only because of the production. They are not looking towards the kg fat, kg SNF production from the particular breed. So green fodder gap is very high, fodder gap is very high currently, which will automatically put pressure on demand of the cattle feed. And the professionalization of dairy industry, where the small farmers are now maintaining their more number of cows, like 5 to 10. If you will see last 10 years, the 10 plus farmers, means 10 animal plus farmer percentage is increasing. It is around now 20 to 22% of the total industry, and remaining 60 to 65% is backyard farming, and only 5 to 7% is actual corporate farming. The organized players are also coming in, like 50, 100, 200, 500 animal farms. But unfortunately, there are very less examples of successful such corporate farms. But now they are adopting some more technology. So maybe in future, we can see more organized players. There is a new, it's not new, but due to the continuous efforts of all feed manufacturers and the emphasis of government cooperatives on the compound feed or the balanced nutrition, now there is the share of compound feed is increasing against to the home mix. If I can quote about Maharashtra approximately requirement is 4 lakh metric ton per month, and all put together organized players are producing 80 to 1 lakh metric ton per month. So what remaining? The remaining is home mix only. So increasing consumption of type 1 feed means currently now people are, as we have seen in January, there was a good demand for the milk, and there was a high rate of 30 rupees, up to 30 rupees in Maharashtra. So people were preferring the quality feed, type 1 feed, and type 2 and type 3 feeds are going down, so that they are trying to get better quality or better, higher protein and higher fat content feed to produce good quality of milk. Some of the government policies, major packages like 15,000 crore package is declared for investment in the dairy industry. That those things are also giving the positive impact on increasing animal population, and by then animal feed requirement. There are some of the factors which are restraining the growth of industry, or I can't say that growth of the industry, but hurdles definitely. As Mr. Shiva has quoted, it was a roller coaster ride in 2019-20, and it is absolutely true. So all type of hurdles we have seen in 2019-20, and very much uncertainties for milk production. Sometimes there is a shortage, sometimes immediately we are getting the flush. Nobody is able to predict what exactly going to happen, because 323 for SMP in January and today 175 is something unbelievable. So some of the factors, like there are some high import duties on feed ingredients, which are restraining us from producing better quality feed or higher cost feeds. Then some regulatory regimes are there. Then volatility in raw material prices because of these El Nino factors, climatic variation. The crop productions has impacted a lot, and which is creating volatility. Frequent disease outbreak in Maharashtra, there is an outbreak of lumpy cow, lumpy skin disease. Such kind of FMD is continuously there. So these are some of the hurdles which are faced by the farmers in currently. But after all this, we have to go ahead. We have to go ahead and, as both of the previous speaker has spoken about, there is a good future for the dairy industry, poultry industry, and other livestock industry. So we have to think about the way forward. India has already got number one position for meat, wool, eggs production, and well, not one, but it is the largest population among all that. And seeing to the current situation, there is acute shortage of feed and fodder. Not the feed, but fodder is there is a acute shortage, at least in the southern part of the country. That is Maharashtra, Gujarat, and this Andhra, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala. Definitely, there is a acute shortage of fodder, and which is varying season to season. And currently, if we will see, the raw materials used in the production of animal feed like soybean meal and sorghum and maize are being diverted to the consumption of human, leading to a shortage in feed industry. Actually, now livestock or animal feed is competing with the human food. So this equation is coming up. Now we have to, that's why it is becoming more expensive and unviable for us to incorporate into the feed. So, for getting a sustainable solution and lower cost ingredients in livestock production, we need to go for some novel ingredient which will be not competing with the human food, and having some more values, and which is waste for somebody can be used as a food for animal feed. In that, in foreign countries currently, insect meal and distillers dried grain are the highly popular ingredient which are incorporated in the feed, and they are utilizing it for as a protein source. When we are now, we will just leave this point about the what the measures we can take for at feed mill level to for effective utilization, and we'll go for these novel ingredient which are called as NCRM, that is NCFR, that is non-conventional raw materials or non-conventional feed resources. Here, what I mean to say is that currently, if we have some feed formulation which is contributing, which is having protein, energy, and the filler part, and some additives. In that protein part, we are utilizing this your soybean or some other oil seed cakes, which are dependent, which are the byproduct of oil milling industry. So they are highly dependent on the crushing of the seed and the total production in the country. At the same time, if we will uh, divert our usage, we can't divert all the usage, but we can make 10 to 15% diversion from the conventional raw material to non-conventional raw material, which will definitely reduce the pressure on the conventional raw materials. And these non-conventional raw materials which are been which are been said like as a inferior quality and all that, we can utilize those non-conventional raw materials with the help of some of the treatments or the processes, where we can do the chaffing, grinding, or mixing or blending into some different kind, uniform blending, so that we can utilize those things, or we can do for the concept of the complete ration, we can do use these unconventional raw materials. We can use the extrusion technologies also. And so we can use some of the enzymes to improve the nutritional quality of these non-conventional raw materials. Some of the ANF anti-nutritional factors are there. So by sun drying or some other processes we can do. So some of the energy sources, I would like to just enlist some of the examples of non-conventional raw materials. Like in energy sources, bubble pods are there, apple waste is there, tapioca byproducts are there, coca pods is there, coconut peat is there. And in protein sources, ambadi cake, corn gluten meal. Corn gluten meal nowadays it is coming under the convention itself. Corn steep liquor, it is one of the upcoming non-conventional raw material source, but it is very good. We are using it, and it is having very good nutritional value also. Then dencha seed, gore meal, isabgal gola, so many byproducts we can use. Some azola, bubble pods, bubble seeds, bubble seed chuni. These are some of the unconventional raw materials that you can include. Finally, what a point I want to make is the shortage of feedstuffs in the future is alarming issue. At present, trends in the poultry industry and dairy industry are showing that there is a gap between the requirements and the supplies of the nutrients. So the non-conventional raw material may help us, and if we will start using NCFR from today, definitely we can reduce the pressure on the conventional raw materials and fulfill the demand of the industry. So that's all from my side, and thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Dinesh. Very informative, useful, I think.
Namaste, good evening. This is Kamad. Thank you very much for this opportunity to present on to the milk quality. So for most of my experience, of the 15 years, I would say 13 years have already gone into quality. And with that particular experience, I would say that, being in a quality sector, I've always been told that, you have to talk about the disaster or the outbreak which has already happened up, which actually, kinds of culminate into the brain of the people that yes, quality is important. And in Hindi we say like, itna dar betha do, ताकि ना लोग क्वालिटी को एक्सेप्ट कर लें. So with that particular experience, I would go with my first slide, which actually talks about by the various outbreaks or the trends in terms of milk quality, which has been seen most of the across of the globe. So nobody can forget about 2008, the melamine incidents, which happened up in China, and the scandal which led to a lot of hue and cry, and also it was an eye opener for a lot of people about economically motivated adulteration. In 2013, there was a nationwide aflatoxin contamination, which was reported in Romania, Croatia, and Serbia. Then there was a classical case in 2017 when glyphosate, which is a controversial herbicide, was actually found up in ice cream in US and Europe. There was a survey also which happened up in 2007 till 2012, which was done by CDC. And they found out that, there has been an increasing report of milk infection or dairy infection, which is happening. And they observed a trend of Campylobacter. And they saw it actually to be doubling in the past 6 years. So there is an upward growth of the microbiological contamination leading to food poisoning or food safety related incidences. Then when we talk about dairy products, it has also been associated for most of the listeriosis cases or outbreaks which has happened up in Europe. So can we please move to the next slide? Yes, thank you. So if we have a look at the dairy value chain and the quality testing which we put on, this is like a universal one wherein we have from the feed level to the storage and distribution, what happens and what kind of quality test is being done. With the context being set by Dr. Dinesh and Udayji, I would like to focus upon the fact that, the quality of raw material is definitely very important over here. And we always say that what goes in comes out. So that's in the case of over here as well. And so that's the reason why, when we say about the animal feed, the health products or the things which is happening up at the farm level, it's very critical about when we get the kind of product at our table level. And here there are lots of quality testing which happens, like mastitis test or aflatoxin. In fact, detergents and adulterant test is also something which can happen at this level area as well. The contamination or the pesticide antibiotics which comes up. And here one of the things which when we slightly move towards the milking and the milking station is like the sanitation, which also comes up because of the food contact surfaces. There is a special mention of 2 flags of European Union and Australia, which I have kept it over here to emphasize on the fact that, how these countries actually put forward their regimes or testing on milk parameters in order to have a quality product at the milk station itself. So this is like, in European Union, the milk quality or the milk parameters, the basic ones, are being checked at the milk station. Neither less to say, these kind of activities are also happening up India, but they are not actually regulated ones. So there they are actually part of the regulation itself. So here we can see that, the more organized sector it becomes, the more emphasis or the easier it can be done. Then moving ahead to the processing or the primary or the secondary processing, whatever it happens up here, the milk parameters, the finished products, and the physical chemical testing is also a very important piece of it. And when it comes to here at the processing level, the sanitation and packaging material testing is something which also comes into picture, which actually impacts the final product as well. And of course, when it comes to warehouse and transportation, it's like the kind of the relative humidity or the temperature, and the surveillance also happens up by the government authorities, or it might be motivated by because of the internal policies which happens up with the MNCs. So when I'm talking about this thing about the value chain, this whole thing of the testing piece is a kind of a lagging indicator, because already whatever has to happen up has already happened up, and then we are trying to analyze and see whether our products are being compliant or not. So there is already there is a concept of leading indicators which are being followed up in majority of the cases. So that's the leading indicators when we talk about. Mostly they are originating up from the processing area, where there is more of a bigger player being working around, and then how we can implement it. So HACCP or the food safety management system comes over here into picture. The supply quality assurance program, which can also have the contaminant control program inbuilt into it, is also there. Then pathogen environmental monitoring, though it's PMP, though it's a pathogen monitoring of the different zones or the contact regions which comes up. So moving on to when we are talking about globally, let's move on to what happens up over here in India. So there is a study which is going on, which is on the National Milk Quality Monitoring System. So we have a proper dedicated program, NMQMS, which they call it as in short form, which is rolled up by FSSI. And under this National Milk Quality Monitoring System, they have till now done 2 types of surveys. So one survey has already happened in 2016. The another survey, which happened up in 2000. For the 2018, but the results were out in October 2019. So this was the new survey, which actually the title itself says that your milk is largely safe. You don't have to worry much about it, but there is a caveat involved into it. Let's go deep down into this survey and what it was being found by FSSI. So they had actually collected 6,432 samples spanning across more than 1,000 cities and countries, and they only find out that 12 of those samples are basically adulterated, and the adulteration level, which means they are unfit for human consumption, they cannot be consumed, or the person will suffer. So what kind of contamination or adulteration they observed was basically they observed detergents, they observed, in fact, one of the samples they observed neutral detergents as well. And why the specific mentioning of neutral detergent is basically the pH range of the detergent helps us to identify it. Once it's neutral, it becomes very difficult to identify it out. Then there was urea as well. And that's it. Milk is very cool and safe. Let's consume it up. So, but there was also hidden stuff that, the aflatoxin M1 was detected in 368 samples, which was out of the limit of our prescribed regulation. There were 77 samples on antibiotics. There were samples which was detected of 156 on maltodextrin. There were samples of 77 numbers which was detected to have artificially put enough sugar into it. So when we say that, the milk is largely safe, we have to literally think about it, like, what level of quality we want to maintain into this. And actually that is what, the sets the bar. So if we move this to are the challenges, what we are seeing up, definitely up into our future, would be definitely that, food fraud is something which is very much important, which has to looked upon. So if we dig into this particular slide of the classical 2008 melamine case, which happened up. So basically, just to give you a glimpse of it, in China, there were 30% of the infants younger than 6 months, which are exclusively breastfeed. And this is something which is a statistics which is correlated with India as well. Like, we in India also, there is a lot of point on breastfeeding, but then there is a stage for the infant when we want them to give them the more nutrition. And in 2008, it was a very drastic stuff, I would say, an eye-opener for the concern of food safety, which came up that, 6 babies died and 54,000 were hospitalized. So what happened was, like, the need, overall, the China government started thinking about, like, let's have a stringent regulation in place. But they also thought about, like, the test methods, what we are using. Are they appropriate enough to identify the adulterants or not? So that's how they decided from moving from the more immuno-based assays to LC-MS methods, which are more accurate and sensitive. But one of the challenges which happened up that, what should be the biomarker or the marker for which we are going to detect? Now, this is a very interesting place wherein, the milk protein, they have, like, different components. And how about, like, having a quality certified reference material, which can actually help us to have the detection very good being done. So the 3 parts of the entire intact milk protein, which is alpha-lactalbumin, beta-lactoglobulin A and B, as well as lactoferrin, were combined together. And this particular CRM was used. And actually, it was actually mentioned by CDC also to use this specific certified reference material to have a better accuracy in test results. And we are just not relying on the nitrogen content just doing up the nitrogen content for the protein and just saying, let's go ahead. So that's how, like, I would say that was a contribution from Merck's side also, that they launched the CRM onto that particular front. And then it's being used globally right now. Next, so one of the things when we go back to the NQMS survey was that, we were only focusing on the chemical and the physiochemical parameters. So the difference, what we saw in the survey, which was done in 2016 versus in 2018 by FSSI, was in 2018, at least they went down to see what were those non-compliance samples and where they were actually failing up. If you go to the list of the NQMS, you will not find that microbiological parameters are still listed over there. So still, that's an area which we feel that, it will be of a major impact for the milk quality and has to be. And similarly, by this tabulated format, you can see that, there are different microbial parameters which are dependent on the different matrices which are being there. So for example, raw milk will have, like, TPC, E. coli, as well as Salmonella listeria to be detected, whereas pasteurized milk will have additional components. And similarly, infant formula would have the more of the components of the matrices to be detected up. So this is mostly based on the EU regulations which is there. But yes, in India also we have FSSI regulations which talks about the microbial parameters which we have to check into different categories of milk. So if we talk about the different levels of checking up, I also mentioned about the sanitation piece or the cleaning piece. And also there are different things which we have to also cater into the quality, especially on the microbiological level. We have to also take a look on the environmental monitoring as well as the hygiene control. So there are methodologies of using up air samplers, which are better than the settle plate method, wherein, you just wait for 30 minutes and you see that, the counts are less and you are happy. And you are happy with that. Whereas there are also methodologies of checking up the food contact surfaces, whether they have been cleaned or not. So ATP bioluminescence is an age-old technology, which has also been used. There are quality indicators as well as media and sample prep situations. So the water which goes up in the cleaning in the dairy as well and different processes is also very critical. So how we can actually test them and find it out. So one thing, if if I may say that, one thing which we are going to see in the next upcoming success rate of milk quality 2030, it would be on rapid pathogen testing as well. Because, the conventional method of microbiology testing is something which requires a lot of time, requires more than 72 hours. Certain times, like, for the simple organism like Eastern mold, we require 5 days of testing. And by the time the milk will already be consumed and being processed. So there is a global trend which is happening up in F&B sector of shifting up to rapid pathogen testing. And that has also been taken up into account by FSSI as well. And they have also released a standard on rapid analytical testing equipments. And they have also tried to emphasize onto it. So there are different portfolios here, which talks about the rapid testing or in microbiology. So there is this one, the VIP Gold, which over here it's being seen over the single DO path. It's nothing but it's similar to like a pregnancy test kit, which is like, ELISA based or the immunoassay based methodology, wherein you have to just put up the enriched samples and you have to see whether the line appears or not. If the line appears, then it means that, there is a possible detection, and then you have to go up proceeding up with the biochemical identification. Similarly, the technology over here listed on Assurance GDS, which is genetic detection system, it's based on PCR, which is like, the more better version, which we have seen from over the years of evolvement. And there is also a IMS technology attached to it, which is immunomagnetic separation technique, which actually helps you to further isolate your pathogens easily. And then, get the results within less than 48 hours, including the enrichment and everything. So here, one thing which we have to be very much careful on the rapid pathogen section would be on the validation piece. Like, are we using the right validated technologies or not? So if we are using technology which is already ISO 16140 Part 2 validated or AUAC validated, it gives the credibility to it. So before using that also, that is something which we have to also take into care. So in order to conclude my presentation, I would say that there are three key growths which we can see. Definitely, there is contaminants detection is something which is going to grow up in the area of quality. Microbiological rapid techniques, definitely for sure. And also we need to watch out for the new contaminants or the new pollutants which can come up. So in India, we have not even talked about dioxins, which are like, coming up from various waste incineration pieces, and how they are like, building up in the fat cells and how they can be excreted into the breast milk itself. So we have to be watchful with those contaminants also. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Kumud. I think this was really a nice view in terms of looking at how the quality challenges we are going to face in India. So wonderful. Thanks a lot. Yeah. So now over to Sanjeev for the downstream part, more on how the market trends are coming in terms of product development or marketing strategy going forward, how he's looking at from Bell perspective or from the industry perspective. Sanjeev, please.
Thank you, Shiva. So what I'm going to be talking about here are the key trends, which we have been observing, some of which will accelerate and some of them will come to predominance. One of the things as which Shiva talked about right at the beginning was the fact that the ongoing pandemic, has seen dramatic different behaviors of consumers and companies alike. We've seen how the dairy industry has responded, both with new products, but my personal feeling is that more could have been done. Now, behavior, as we know, is the most difficult thing to change. But if you look at it from a COVID perspective, given the scare which was there, it has led to a lot of new behaviors. A series of lockdowns, which led to people staying at home. It led to people experimenting with food, trying out new stuff, trying out different things, and also posting it on the social media, has resulted in an all-time probably higher, in-home consumption. Dairy products like cheese, particularly in the small packs, saw phenomenal growth, and all players were benefited as a result of that. But the other side of the story, which again Shiva talked about initially, was this whole aspect of out-of-home consumption. Out-of-home consumption, given the fact that we were not traveling outside, saw a dramatic drop, and even key dairy products, like milk, ice cream, and dairy beverages, they took a major beating. Now, consumer buying behaviors have also changed, and you would have seen that in your houses also. You may have relied more on the online platforms. Some of you would have been new to the online platform, gone onto the e-commerce sites and purchased from there. Some of you who may have gone to modern trade stores, which were far off from your house, you may have decided to only just step out to your neighborhood kirana store and buy from there. You would have probably ordered in more through a phone delivery system. Now, the call of the hour was better immunity to ward off the virus, and anything and everything would help. We were looking for immunity in practically everything that we probably ate. And food companies responded by launching new products or repositioning new ones, given this whole change in the way people were wanting things, particularly the food products. Dairy companies also, we saw, responded in a similar manner. Now, given the health benefits of milk and the attendant possibilities, my personal belief is that more could have been done and probably well in advance. Okay. One thing which is certain is that the future will be uncertain. However, from not only an individual perspective, but also from an organizational perspective, I think all of us need to be better prepared. One thing which I believe in the coming years and maybe the next one decade, particularly in India, will see a whole change is the fact that we will be very conscious about our consumption. We'll be very careful about what we eat, what we put on our plate, and what goes in our body. So the two things which I believe will be very, very critical from an individual perspective, which will be the big signal which will go out to the companies, is that it will be healthy and natural all the way forward. And another thing which will happen as a result of this is that people are going to seek simplicity out of their foods. Okay. So what's going to happen as a result of this? One big trend which will come about, we don't see that right now, but is the fact that your labels are going to get clean. Today, when you look at a product label, I don't know how many of you will actually look at it, but you'd see a plethora of ingredients or products over there making up that whole basic product. So ingredients which are simple, natural, wholesome, and traditional will start appealing to a broad cross section of people. And you will see that dairy which has protein, calcium, and vitamin nutrients, which are on a trend for today's consumers, they will start making a bold play. And a shortest ingredient statement will signify real food. In our organization at Bell, what we're trying to do across the globe in the various countries that we are present, we're trying to simplify recipes across brands. Okay. And one of our brands, Kiri, which has just been relaunched with the shortest list of ingredients, has only milk, cream, water, salts, and ferments. And in 2021, we are looking to kind of launch a new recipe of the laughing cow, which will have an equally short list of ingredients. So clean labels where the consumer can understand exactly what is there on that food pack is going to be a way forward. The other thing which all of us, while we love and we kind of love to hate it, actually, if I would say so, is sugar. But as industry players, we realize the importance of sugar also, that sugar provides the taste and texture that consumers so love. However, increasingly being down upon by most consumers as a way to avoid health issues. So if I were to say that magic bullet that is a 0-calorie label-friendly sweetener, that tastes and functions like the full sugar version remains elusive, and currently we don't have an alternate to sugar or trying to get that sweetness or texture in the food. So that's going to be still some way off. But what dairy products can do over here is to take a lead in terms of, propositioning their products as something which has less sugar, keeping it at minimal levels. And as a result of this, they can probably derive premiums from the consumers, something which is very critical as we move on the value added side, something which Shiva talked about also initially. So this whole aspect of movement to the value added side will mean better revenues for the organization, better bottom lines for the organization. And you can do two more things as a result of that, is that apart from the fact that you get a certain premium, you can also increase the perception about your organization. So that's one important thing which you should look at. In India, we've seen that snacking is a big thing. Okay. And if you look at the Nielsen FMCG results studies, you'll see that products like biscuit and salty snacks rule the roost to an extent that if you were to look at snacking is a big thing. And what's going to also happen with us Indians is that we're going to be having smaller meals, given that more people are kind of going into the workforce. we will see a demand for healthy on-the-go snacks, and dairy snacks can participate over here. This will be a fallout of the changing consumer lifestyle. Now, one thing which I believe can be done over here in India and could be a big market is the drinks segment. These can, I mean, the dairy industry can definitely take advantage of it, and so you have flavored milk over here, but something which combines a lesser quantum of sugar in that, and possibly which is more healthy, more fulsome, can be given to the consumer. Plus yogurt-based drinks, which are yet to make a big play over here as far as the country is concerned. I see a lot of potential as far as that is concerned. If you were to look at the Bell proposition, is that typically all our cheese brands, are sold as portions, as small portions, which are individually packed and which you can have on the go. So the portion is in a way our signature. It reduces food wastage. It's healthy and safe, and you can enjoy without overeating. So what's all this going to lead to is that the consumer is going to be taking care of his or her health and body, and that's going to be of paramount importance. Now, the food and ingredients which support these goals will be preferred. We've already seen the importance and the demand for protein, okay, protein-based food products. Now, consumers are seeking protein like never before, given its perception as the macronutrient, which is most beneficial for health issues. Diets today are popularizing high protein consumption, and protein is seeming like the nutrient, which can do no wrong, given its positive association with weight management, which will keep demand high. So here, dairy companies can look at this whole aspect of having products which have a high protein content. Some companies, some dairy players have already started this process, and a bigger play as far as drinks and yogurt are concerned. I see that's something which can drive the way forward. Another aspect to which is bound to happen is this whole focus on gut health. We are seeing, I mean, if you read the science journals, you'll realize there is a huge connect between the mind and gut. Now, if one were to kind of take care of one's body, the gut is something which you have to kind of take care of also. So gut health is going to be of importance. Educated and aware consumers will realize its benefits with regard to digestion and overall well-being. Eating more dairy that is rich in probiotics, fiber, and prebiotics will become more predominant. People will want such kind of products. And with added features, you can justify the premium and take on the dairy alternatives, which we'll talk about in just a while. Another aspect which is it's critical, and I would say this more from an organizational perspective. For every dairy organization, we can play a part in terms of the role, which is that we know that micronutrients are critical for overall growth and development of children. There are different levels of micronutrient deficiency in children. Okay, and there is a study which has been released by the Indian government. You can read that. Fortification of dairy products will help resolve such challenges to a great extent. At Bell Worldwide, what we do is that we typically look at every country. We try to figure out what is the macronutrient which is deficient and try to work upon our products, trying to enhance the macronutrient content over there. So till date, what we've done is that 54 products have been updated with nutrient-enriched recipes in markets across the world where specific nutritional needs were expressed. And in India too also, I mean, we are a very recent player as far as this country is concerned. We've launched the Laughing Cow cheese over here. And here the focus is also on the whole aspect of macronutrients. So we're propositioning it as something which you can enjoy and at the same time take care of your health and body. There's another big thing which every dairy player has to realize, or rather any food company has to realize, is that consumer choices, as consumers become more educated and more aware, will be increasingly influenced by societal concerns. While we want good to happen to our bodies, we'll want good to happen to the environment too. And I see this when I speak to a lot of youngsters in terms of what's happening around them with respect to the environment. These are concerns which are playing on the mind, and these will kind of permeate into the choices which they make with respect to the brands that they buy. So sustainability is going to be a big thing. Consumers are becoming concerned about how their consumption habits will impact future generations. And this is translating into the choices of brands that care for the environment. Now, such consumers are going to be willing to pay more for brands with a positive impact if done with authenticity. Okay, you can't just afford to do lip service. You actually have to believe in the cause that you are working towards. And consumers, if they understand what you're doing, and they kind of buy into it. When I say buy, they believe what they you do. They're willing to kind of associate more positively with your brand and also be willing to pay a premium for your brand. Now, dairy brands, what they can do is to identify the challenges that they can help solve and pinpoint a particular aspect that builds into a positive position of strength. So you identify something which you care about and which you believe you can help to solve, and you play that to your strength. Okay. Now, at Bell, what we're doing is to prioritize challenges with respect to climate, healthier food, sustainable agriculture, responsible packaging, and accessibility. One of the programs which we run across 7 cities across the world is what's known as the Sharing Cities program, which is more to kind of interact and sell through street vendors, to lift their financial position and also kind of include them financially. So we give them, we teach them about health, we teach them about financial planning, we support them with life insurance policies, we support them with medical insurance. So these are small things which we're trying to help the street vendors across these 7 cities as on date. Another aspect which is very critical, and if you look at it in your homes, you'll also realize that the whole aspect of food waste. Consumers are becoming aware and concerned about the wastage in food. A study shows that 55% of wastage actually happens on the consumer side, and various organizations, are stepping in to support this loss of wastage. What dairy companies could do is to not only help create the awareness amongst their consumers, but also work towards significantly reducing wastage at the consumer end, maybe by partnering with such kind of organizations. The whole aspect of societal concern is also seeing to a lot of launches in the dairy alternative space, something which kind of competes directly with the dairy industry. What we're seeing is that while in India it's a nascent industry, I agree, outside it's a large and growing industry, and it's all growing on the back of being perceived to be healthier and believed to be bringing variety to the daily diet. Mostly what I see are younger consumers willing to switch given the increased awareness on animal welfare and environmental footprint. Now it's critical for dairy brands to increase the engagement with this segment of consumers, because what the youngsters or the next generation of people, they're going to be the future consumers. So how are you going to kind of inculcate or bring along a sense that dairy is good for you, okay, and grow this whole market? So that's critical. So I believe that we see a lot of brands in the non-dairy space starting to come within in India, and more so in the alternate space. A small thing, whole aspect is that apart from the trends in the food in dairy space, what we're also going to see is the way consumers buy. Okay, and here I believe that dairy players need to be flexible and adapt new routes to market. We've all seen during the pandemic how we've personally interacted with the internet and e-commerce. The internet is going to be an enabler and is going to help us. Consumers will begin the buying journey using the internet, and what's going to be a fallout of this whole thing is that you'll see the rise of startup and challenger brands which will reach out to consumers using e-commerce platforms or will go direct. So it'll allow for new concepts to be tried out more easily, and once accepted, these brands could go more mainstream. A last point which I'd like to put forward to everybody in the forum over here is this: to evaluate the process in which you sell. So Shiva, I think, touched upon it briefly in terms of the whole aspect that we're moving from commodity to branded. We will need to evolve and build our capabilities. The whole process of selling to the consumers should be genuine and be more consultative. That's what I feel. Thank you, Shiva. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Sanjeev. I think you touched upon a lot of good points on the consumer side, which I think would be of interest to the audience. At least I like them. So now, next is Mr. Rajiv Kumar from Reliance Industries Limited, and again, a different perspective on packaging side. As we understand, packaging is under scanner, so it will be good to have his perspective of how packaging stakeholder is looking at this kind of industry. Of course, they look to many other different industries as such as a partner, but it would be good to understand their role in the dairy industry side. Rajiv.
Thank you, Shiva. Thanks a lot. And Sanjeev has already paged the thing that we are heading towards a consumer perspective. So today the packaging is playing not a role of a secondary packaging, but it's a really vital role in terms of the shelf life, nutrition value, and other aspects. And we found that dairy industry is really adaptive and agile in this particular pandemic scenario. As you see, the past, the milkman used to come with a container, bulk container, and supply milk at the doorstep. And but they were quite localized in terms of the region for the supplies of milk. So milk booth has really taken a shape in a glass bottle, and there was an exchange of glass bottle happening, two bottles in a returnable basis. But that was consigned to increase the logistic part as well as the distribution to the state level. But the real revolution came when the milk pouch get into the picture. It was light in a weight and really played a significant role in terms of logistic, and lighter weight has really reduced the industry cost and increased the margin. But the real innovative revolution came when the value added product started coming into the market. Earlier, all value added product was used to prepare at home. So once the value added product came, the new shelf life, taste, and nutrition value started taking its own shape and place. And the zone was not a constant. The people used to get export the products out of the India. Now the generation is shifting towards the mart and e-commerce, which Sanjeev has already mentioned. And it a consumer is really focusing on what they are going to adopt in their daily social life. So now the shelf life, taste, and nutrition value will play a role, but the environment aspect is also taking its own place. So the material which is going to get tagged into the bottle or any other uh, product will definitely lead to the recycling of the product. So now, in the consumer perspective, farm to table is one of the example which is happening up in India. Lot of new dairy players are entering into it. They are selecting the right kind of packaging material, the PET bottles, containers, and jars. Now, India is heading towards the digitalization, and this digitalization is really creating a revolution in terms of supplies of milk. And the farmer is also differentiating the milk in different forms, like camel milk, goat milk, and including the milk which is not which is was having another vitamin values like A2 milk also. But we feel that जो दिखता है वो बिकता है. Now he is there for a long time, but today it has been packed in such a manner that in a different shape, and the transparency and convenience is attracting the consumer part. So you can design a different shape of the product with respect to a container with the PET material. The technology is also enabling the product, and the high shelf and nutrition value is also being maintained. The aseptic line which is coming up in India is really driving the nutrition value of the content. Now we are finding the dairy segment as well as the is exploring the market of carbonated drinks, and the carbonated drinks are exploring the market of dairy segment. So immunity becomes fun now. Please, next slide, please. So what is the role of packaging material today? Is that these are five factors which are taking a real shape. Sustainability, that material of packaging which has been selected should be recycled and have content in circular economy. The smaller size packs are getting preferred for the on-go consumption. And the health is key part to it. Today, the pandemic has made us realize that the immunity is a key factor, and a lot of immunity-based drinks are getting launched. And the innovation in terms of packaging to maintain the shelf life, avoiding the cold chain, is also taking place. These are the few examples internationally packed in the rigid bottles with different flavors like milkshake, UST, milk flavored milk yogurt are being packed into the bottles, and bottles are playing a very friendly role into it. Now, as we know, the PET, as we know that the milk is highly perishable, and the quality, hygiene, and shelf life plays a significant role. Indian market, in terms of the logistics, is playing through the cold chain with the insulated supply, and these all material has been packed into the pouch. But we are not finding the rigid package it takes its own shape because of the cost factor. But with the period of time, we feel that the normal fresh milk can be packed into the rigid bottles with a label on it, what are the ingredients and constituents into it. So And we know that the aseptic line is taking its own shape with the advanced filling packaging. So these are the few global market references where the quality of fresh milk has been packed into the bottle. One beautiful example that whatever we pack the in pouches need a secondary packing material which is known as crate to transit the flexible goods to the other zones. But if we move ahead with the new technology, there are shrink sleeves which are applied over the bottles, which can avoid the crate cost into the system. And this will really lower down the hurdles of returnable crate logistics. Now, in case of the in case of the technology, we are finding the aseptic line is also taking its own shape in the Indian market. There is a 7 lines been installed in India by Amul is leading the race. Nandini, Vishal Beverages, Varun Beverages, and ITC are playing a role into it. This means that there is no requirement of the cold chain with the supply of this UST milk to the zones where the per capita consumption of milk is very low, and there is a higher shelf life in this particular packing material, around 6 months. So this leads to availability of the milk to the zones which is lower in the per capita consumption. And you can brand the product with the bottle design, lot of new shapes, as well as the uh, weights can be lower down to lower down the cost and optimize the value. These are the technology providers, those who provide the aseptic line. This is a costly affair, so the large financial dairy companies are investing into it. So these are the aseptic international brands which are there. You can find in UK, China, Brazil, Italy, Canada. They are moving ahead with the aseptic technology. Yeah, we are also finding that ghee is one of the segment which is picking up in the Indian market. There is a relpet resin which we provide, and we have this goes to the preform manufacturers where it makes a preform and it's blown into the jar, and then the ghee goes into the filling line, and then it goes to the pack ghee goes to the wholesale retailer and the consumer. We find the cost of the jars which has been transported is too high. So our proposal is that to put a blowing unit at the dairy process house where the cost can be lowered by 30 to 50% in this process. So these bottles, what happens to these bottles? Because consumer is becoming friendly towards the environment, so we need to collect it back into the system. Today 90% bottles which are being consumed in the beverage are getting back into the system, and with these bottles lot of articles are being made out of it. These t-shirts, jeans, jackets, fibers pillows, straps, car seat covers are made of these PET bottles. So these recycled PET bottles really lead to the sustainable goal for the dairy industry. So Reliance is a key provider of the resin for the packaging material. So once this packaging material gets converted into the article like bottle, and when the consumer uses this bottle, it throws away, and Reliance gets collected it back into the system and make a Reliance green gold fiber out of it. And from this fiber, it makes a fabric of different colors and designs. And this has been branded as our Elan. From these these fabrics are going to the various top brands like Nike, Adidas, where this is being consumed. We took this initiative along with the big dairy industry, Amul, and started a collection model at one of their booths to make the consumer awareness into the picture. So Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation, Mr. Vijay Nehra, the commissioner of the corporation, inaugurated the RVM machine along with Reliance and Amul to make the general people understand the value of the rigid packaging product such as PET. So we are looking forward for the integration with large dairy sectors where the consumption can happen with the PET bottles. And this is our team. Anyone wants to contact with us, they are free to do that for the sustainability collaboration. Thank you.
Thanks, Rajiv. I think this was really at least a new view for us. Like you talked about certain parts where you can make it more efficient in the value chain, and also to understand about recycling part, which is becoming very critical for almost all the industry stakeholders now. Circularity concept coming in, government regulations coming in. So I think your role will become as a packaging stakeholder, recycler. I think that will become more and more critical going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiva.
Now, finally, to Anup Singh of Solera Advisor. So, maybe to get inputs from Anup on risk management, on trade-linked scenarios. So, hopefully, we can get good insights. Yeah.
So, thank you for having me. It's It's indeed a deep honor to be in this group and be asked to give my ideas. My name is Anup. I I don't know how each one of you got into the dairy market. I got into the dairy market because I married my wife, who is the daughter of a sixth generation dairy farmer here in Vermont. So that's how I got into dairy. I spent 10 years in energy markets, and then I moved to agricultural markets. So the way we've been trained to think about risk management in a supply chain is in terms of risk and uncertainty. So what I mean by that is when we set up a business, any business, what we are providing our customers is certainty. And the theme that I've heard throughout this entire presentation has been one of quality certainty, of assurance that you will not fall sick when you consume the product. In fact, you will feel good about consuming the product. So really what we are selling to our customers is certainty. What we as a business do is our ingredient into our businesses is uncertainty. When we are taking in raw materials, I don't think we have a good idea of what this raw material may turn out to be. There is a lot of uncertainty in our supply chain. Simple things like, will trucks be available? Will there be power? Will the capacity work? Will the labor show up? Many such things. COVID, think about the pandemic as a piece of uncertainty in this equation. So what we as a business are doing is exchanging uncertainty for certainty. And what the customers pay us in return is a premium for the product that we sell them. Now, each of you represent brands in the audience. I'm sure there are many people from various brands. And the way we think about brands here is brands is actually credit risk. So in other words, I will not fall sick. And if I fall sick, the brand will take care of me because I consumed your product. So really, we are paying a premium for certainty. Now, as a business, we have a lot of uncertain factors that we deal with. And there are certain factors that we have the skill to manage and have the capacity to manage. And those are skills that we want to keep in our business and originate those types of risks. And the risks or uncertainty factors that we don't have the skill to manage, or is cheaper for us to syndicate or give this transfer to somebody else to manage, we should do that. And that's broadly how we think in terms of risk management. So identify this uncertainty that the business is set up to manage. Identify uncertainty that you don't have the skills to manage. We'll take a very quick example. We're all in the dairy business. So now let's say we are contracting to get a logistics or a transportation supply agreement with we are contracting with to get shipping services, and the trucker says, I'll make sure 6 trucks are available every week, but you have to pay for diesel. So the diesel price goes from 100 rupees to 200 rupees, your charges will double. Now, I'm a dairy person. I have no idea what the diesel price, and I'm inheriting the risk of managing diesel. Now, if you know how to manage the price of diesel, very good. That's an uncertainty you should keep. But if you are not certain about managing the price of diesel, you tell the supplier, can you please manage this price of diesel? Well, the supplier might come back to you and say, well, if I have to fix you the diesel price, instead of 100 rupees, I have to charge you 150 rupees. So that's what I mean by what uncertainty do you want to keep in your business and what uncertainty do you want to pass over. So the second part in risk management is understanding what is individually the department or the person, what is your mandate? Is your mandate to play offense or your mandate to play defense? And the way we think about that is, if I'm selling a product, so I go around the country and I create demand and I go forward sell whatever product I'm selling, so I'm getting certainty of demand. Now that's a risk that the business has been set up to take. Right? Each business is a speculative venture. The entire life is about speculation, and speculation is good because speculation is how we earn a living. Speculation is how we make money, and there is no reward without risk. So there's good risks. So creating the product that your business was set up to do, going and marketing and selling it, that's playing offense. You are fiercely competitive with your customers, with your competitors. There are other people in the business whose job is to play defense. take the uncertainty out that we do not know how to manage. So first part is understanding what our individual roles and responsibilities are. Is our job to play offense? Is our job to play defense? The second part then is what is the instruments within our business that are available for us to play offense or play defense? So here are four broad instruments. Volume flexibility. Can I sell you more when I have more? Can I sell you less when I have less? Location flexibility. I told you I would deliver the product in Bombay. Can I deliver the product to you somewhere nearby? Timing flexibility. Can I deliver the product to you slightly later? Can I deliver the product to you slightly earlier? Specification flexibility. So these are at a broad level four interesting, undervalued, underutilized instruments of managing risk inside a business. Now, where do we get these instruments? Well, we get these instruments from our relationships, customers and suppliers. I will share with you that in the last 9 to 10 months, in the pandemic, the least used instrument was flexibility. Everybody was looking at other places to manage this risk, whereas most of this risk, the best place to manage it was within your customers and suppliers. Now, the challenge of sourcing these four instruments is that these four instruments are so embedded in our day-to-day business and day-to-day transaction and day-to-day management that we actually fail to think about these four instruments as instruments for managing risk. So that's one thing we need to learn how to do is when we negotiate contracts and we negotiate agreements, is we negotiate these, we consciously negotiate these four instruments. The second part is each of these instruments comes with a premium. So in other words, if I'm giving my customer volume flexibility that my customer can lift, in our case here, if my customer can lift anywhere from, let's say the contract is for 3 million pounds a month, and the contract, basically the customer says, well, can I have £500,000 flexibility? In other words, can I buy as much as 3.5 million pounds and can I lift as little as 2.5 million pounds? That flexibility that you're providing the customer, we need to charge a premium for it. Now, similarly, if we have to exercise flexibility, meaning I have slightly less, can I sell you less? We might have to discount our services a bit. So the second part, first is negotiating for this flexibility. The second part is assigning a premium or a cost to this flexibility. Because once we assign a premium and a cost, then negotiating this flexibility makes it, it becomes a sustainable practice. Now, in addition to this flexibility, then there are additional instruments to manage risk in the business. Insurance, which is a more linear, defined instrument. You pay a premium to an insurance company or anybody who's going to provide you insurance, and what you get in return is certainty. And there are other instruments which I would bucket them as assurance. So derivatives markets, derivatives products, structured products that you will go buy not from an insurance company, but from a bank or a market provider. We'll put them in the bucket of assurance products. But as you can see, the way the hierarchy we've laid out is instruments inside the business that you can negotiate from customers and suppliers, and then additional instruments where you would go to people who are not in part of your value chain, but support your value chain to source additional instruments that help manage the risk in the business. Right. So the last part in this equation then is what role does your business and senior management play in this? Well, the first part is that the senior management, A, needs to agree with your mandate. Are you playing offense? Are you playing defense? I'll give another example of offense and defense. It's a slightly interesting concept to wrap our heads around. I used to manage a pretty large butter plant and 4 cheese plants in Vermont. And in our butter business, what took me time to negotiate with everybody within my business was, are we making money by selling branded butter 40 cents above wholesale? Or do I need to speculate on the wholesale price for us to make our budget? Meaning, if we are selling 10 million pounds of butter times 50 cents, is my business plan $5 million? Or do I have to speculate on the butter commodity to make 10 cents because the premium we are charging is not 50 cents, we're charging only 40 cents? In other words, I have to now play offense with managing my inventory. Another way to think about this is, as marketers, your job is to sell the product higher than the cost of goods sold or the inventory value. So your defense line is the value of the inventory. Now you can go and take risks anything above that as long as you don't kill the value of inventory. As purchasers, our job is to make sure that we're not buying raw materials above the make cost or the budget. So that's a way to think about offense and defense. Now, the senior management needs to agree with this mandate that my job is to play offense or my job is to play defense, or collectively, here are the roles that we need to play. Now, the second part that we need to get the senior management bought in is these instruments. And what does it mean to have these instruments in the contracts? Do the customers and the suppliers also understand these instruments of flexibility? So that sounds trivial. It is very difficult. It takes us years to get a uniform understanding of these flexibility and how this flexibility is exercised. So what we are saying is that we need to get buy-in from management for the use of these flexibility in our regular day-to-day contracts and agreements, and utilize that. And what the management then gives us is tolerances or risk limits, because a business is about managing flex and adapting to how the business is changing, as long as we are charging a premium for providing the flexibility to the market, and we are paying a discount when we don't receive flexibility in return. So this picture, if this management process needs to exist to be a good foundation for setting up, risk management in the business. And lastly, what makes a business sustainable is the ending equity to be higher than the beginning equity. Any activity that impairs equity impairs sustainability of the business. Any activity that increases the equity increases sustainability to the business. So in closing, what I would say is that I think the short ideas that I just discussed, I think everybody in the audience, everybody in every business, especially in India, you probably do it. I learned my skills of relationships because I am Indian. I grew up in India. I've lived here for the last 25 years. But so we are very good at managing relationships. So I think everything we discussed, you probably already do. What you may perhaps not do is consciously consider these instruments as risk management instruments and relationships as instruments to manage risk. So I would ask you, if you don't do it, please take a moment and consciously start to look for those instruments and understand how you can weave flexibility, relationships, flex in that relationship, charging a premium for flexibility, and creating a discount when flexibility is not available from your suppliers as instruments of risk management. Thank you.
Thanks, Anup. I think very different and interesting take on how the situation is in India. Like you mentioned about this kind of instruments. In India, it's more about relationship, informal network. So we don't have that much of sophisticated situation or business model working. But I hope that with people like you, we will have more such kind of product coming into the market.
And Shiva, what's also interesting is that even in the Western markets, we don't have the level of depth of sophistication that from a distance is perceived. Like if I go to the market today and try to hedge, my butter inventory, I'd be lucky if somebody can give me even 2% liquidity. So it boils down to relationships. We manage. What we have done here is we've learned how to put a value on relationships. I think that's the only difference.
Yeah, true. Thanks a lot
My
for
pleasure.
that presentation. Now we will go to the Q&A session, and I will start off with the Q&A part, which I think I was looking at the chat box also. So starting with the Anil question on it's to the for Jersey versus HF breed. So as in basic question, so will not take much time, but he's asking about the differential you have seen, any kind of in terms of yield, any kind in terms of performance. How do you have seen the performance of Jersey versus HF in Punjab?
Well, if you go for the yield per se, of course, Holston is giving more. But then again, you have to see that how much it takes to give you that much more. If I have to spend 1 rupee to get 120, and if I have to spend 60 paisa to get 110, I would prefer to go for 110 only. Because here, for me, margin of profit is higher in comparison to getting 1 rupee 20 paisa. Right? So Jersey, if you go for the whole economics of Jersey breed, it gives you more because it takes at least 30% lesser feed than what Holston takes. It occupies at least 20% lesser space in a barn to keep. It takes about 30% again lesser water intake. Fat, because we are paid here on the solid and fats. And it gives you at least 1% higher fat or 1.5% higher fat than Houston. So total money what you get out of Jersey is much higher than Houston. That's why the farmers in earlier this PDFA was known as Houston Association of Punjab. But now they are slowly moving towards Jersey and they are demanding a lot of Jersey semen from us. Government of India is yet to consider the demand and they have to go for certain changes in the policy to accommodate more number of Jersey bulls to supply semen to India.
Okay, great. I think that answers your question, Anil. So I will go to Sanjeev now. Sanjeev, you touched upon the alternative part. It's not a question from the audience, but just one thing on how you are looking at Indian market from a plant alternative situation in the dairy side. Like you play in global market on cheese side, and I can see a few companies coming in which are playing in the dairy side, whether cell-based or plant-based alternative. So how do you see that kind of market emerging in India? I know that it's still long way to go, but any kind of trends you are looking at, Sanjeev?
So Shiva, in terms of plant-based products, be it dairy or otherwise, I still see it to be a very nascent category right now. But if you were talking about it, let's say 10 years down the road, I think at least in the top tier cities, the one where the urban population lives, that's one place where you can definitely look to make a significant presence, because you'll have people staying over there who are educated, maybe have traveled abroad also, come under the influence of such kind of products and realize the benefits. So it's a potential market and something which the dairy industry should carefully watch for, because that's going to come at the cost maybe of the dairy industry too.
Okay, I think point taken. It will take some time. It's not only for dairy. I think only generally for food that kind of
Yes,
situation is
absolutely.
there. Okay, one question which Leon has asked, I think, to Anup, you were talking about the risk management part. So he is asking that the one thing that we were discussing, we don't have that sophisticated, developed commodity market situation in India. So how Indians can tap, I assume he's asking from India perspective, like Chicago or any other maybe location that we can tap for dairy ingredients.
Right. So the first thing I would say that what India actually has is a well-developed market. India probably does not have a structure of derivatives or risk management instruments publicly available in the market in India. What I understand is that, given the logistics and the various weather profiles, season profiles in India, there is a good amount of physical trading that happens. A area of deficit buys physical product to fulfill themselves when the market's in deficit and surplus. So that kind of trading happens in India. Accessing Chicago, other markets is very possible. I mean, there are probably more regulatory topics to overcome of your banking and cash and things like that. But those are all easily things that one can easily overcome. The difficult part is understanding, in derivative terms, we call basis. So basis is how your physical market behaves relative to a derivatives market that is not solving for purposes of supply demand in your market. So once that basis relationship is understood, and it's not mathematical, it's behavioral, it's very business, and those are things that I would argue that India should develop an understanding of what the India basis is and start using Chicago. You see, in the case of soybean and corn, entire world uses the Chicago market, but what they're trading is trading the basis. So Brazil is selling soybean Chicago plus 50, China is buying soybean Chicago plus 120. So Chicago then just becomes a reference. What we are managing risk is what is the basis on that risk. So what we need to develop an understanding for is what is the India basis. Now we've done some testing. Prashant and I have been doing some testing on using a global skim milk and a global butterfat, price reference. And the way we do that is we take butterfat prices from Oceania, US, and Europe, and we weight them every month based on export availability. So it's not because export availability is what's coming into the market that might be available, on the FOBCs. So we take that number and we've been testing it with what might be the cash prices in India. What we definitely see is the shape is very similar. It's not the same price, meaning there is a basis relationship. So you can look at that price and say, hey, this price plus 50, I'd like to buy, and this price, plus 100, I would like to sell. So that's what I mean by the basis. So I think we should start with the basis understanding. Getting to the market, Chicago is easy. Getting out of it, meaning when you are in a position that you don't like, managing that risk becomes very difficult. So understanding the basis is the first step to it. Access is easy, actually.
Okay, I think possibly we have to have a local pricing reference for that, which is not the case right now.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. One question to Mr. Rajiv. So it's linked to the recycled PET bottle. And even I want to understand from him, like you talked about recycling and the use in different kind of products. You in fact mentioned about this RPSF also going into recycled polyester fiber-based products. But I want to understand more about what kind of food grade rPET, recycled PET products we have looking at, because in beverages we still don't have government allowing use of recycled PET in beverage bottle like Coca-Cola or Pepsi bottles. In food also we have seen like non-contact basis, like in strawberry punnets, those kind of thing, non-contact basis, we are seeing some kind of usage, but food contact is not allowed. So what's your view on that? What are you looking at in terms of government allowing that kind of thing in future, so that market can be actually bigger for us in recycling?
See, in case of the PET, it is getting recycled in two methods. One is with the mechanical recycling, other is a chemical recycling. So in terms of mechanical recycling, the priority of the PET flakes is not to that extent which is required. But for the chemical recycling, the whole PET get converted into the raw material, which is PET and MEG for PET production. And the quality is as good as a virgin material. So we feel that in coming time, this chemical recycling technology is taking its own shape globally. And in coming time, this technology will take its own pace also in terms of commercial scale. Right now, it's on the pilot scale development, and the technology is quite proven. Hoping for the last within 2-3 years span of time, some commercial production will come into the picture. And a lot of big brands are heading towards the chemical recycling technology from the PET bottles. So the quality of flakes from mechanical recycling are not susceptible for food-to-food contact. So there are some technologies which are coming up specifically for multi-layer technology, where you can put the PET recycled material into the core, and on the top, the surface which is getting in contact with the food material is a virgin grade. So this kind of technology is also getting explored. So we are in talks with the government bodies how we can really look into the use of this particular rPET material into the circular economy form. But in India, the good part is the majority of recycled material is getting consumed in a different product grade, like there's going to textile, and the textile industry is lacking in terms of the getting the supplies of PET bottles. So more the PET bottle consumption, the textile industry will get boosted up.
Yes, I think largely it's still going into textile only. That's the only thing. I'm looking at how food company can use that. If you look at Southeast Asia, also Coca-Cola actually is having a tie with Indorama Ventures for bottle-to-bottle recycling plant in Philippines. Again, few global companies like Veolia, they are actually setting up base in Southeast Asian market. But in India, I think this food-grade rPET manufacturing is still some way to go. Okay, fine. One question which is asked by Sujay, I think it's to Dr. Dinesh, in terms of utility of NTFP, basically non-timber forest products. And I think you touched upon that in some sense on neem and bubble powder. So how you see that kind of products coming into as an ingredient in animal feed as such, maybe cattle or poultry or any kind of feed? Do you see that kind of future in India? Though it's still very early days that way.
No, definitely. For cattle feed, already people have started using non-conventional raw materials like these all stuffs I already mentioned, the list of them. In that also, these bubble pods and apple waste and other tapioca, cocoa pods, coconut peat, and all these things are already mentioned. So these products can be utilized for incorporating in balanced feed with the help of some of the enzymes and some of the additives, which will increase the digestibility of those products, and we can replace some of the conventional raw materials. So 2 to 5% or up to 10% means 2-3 products put together, up to 10% we can replace the conventional raw material, which will help in reducing the cost of the product without hampering the quality and safety of the final finished goods.
Okay, so we hope that this particular thing will take place going forward, actually. Okay. Yeah. One question to Kumud, and like we have seen in COVID situation, Kumud, the kind of issues in hygiene level and that kind of focus at consumer level has increased actually globally, and India particularly, if you look at how this transition from informal to formal, from loose to package is happening. So do you see that kind of quality focus turning in terms of now companies proactively trying to engage with stakeholders, trying to create these quality business models, like you talked about HACCP, but these are largely at processing level, but I'm talking about the value chain overall, like from farm to the consumer. Do you see any kind of major shift happening in future because of this crisis?
Thank you for bringing that up, because that is something which is like, at now the heart of it. And COVID actually, on a whole, if I would say that, it has brought up to different reality checks for us at different area. And when it comes to food industry, it has actually, revolutionized, I would say, in terms of quality. Because prior to that, COVID, we were working on mostly on the conventional level, that how we would be reactive basis, like as we are saying, like most of the places. So yes, there has been lots of changes, lots of things. One of the good thing I would say that it happened that that for the humanity's sake, it didn't happen that the food was one of the main source for transferring of COVID, which was the best piece. But yes, there has been lots of learnings which has coming up right from the impact of how people have started managing their raw materials, right of doing the assessment or the threats. So now people have started, like, there are good MNCs, I would say, which have moved from HACCP to TACCP, which is of the threat assessment, rather than, doing just focusing on the hazard assessment. So there has been lots of conceptualization which has happened up to detect. There have been also, proactively people started talking about how do we monitor COVID situation in terms of environmental sampling. Because there were certain incidences wherein we observed that during the cold storage, especially for the meat and the fish products, there was transfer of this particular virus, of the coronavirus, happening up from people to people also happening up. So people were actually, quite very much thinking towards that particular context. And yes, in terms of assessing the threat, now they are also looking at over and beyond that, what could jeopardize their system when it comes to food safety. So there are things going on. There are precautionary stuffs, which is focusing on sanitation, which is focusing on new improved food assessment systems, also improved detection technologies as well, like, how they can combat that situation not to happen again.
Sure. Thanks, Kumud. I think we do see this kind of situation coming in, and in the past, not much happening. As in, I can relate to, like we were talking about packaging, plastic waste management rules have come in. I will relate it in terms of implementation. So hope that we will have good implementation considering the kind of issues we have faced in coronavirus time. So thank you. Thanks a lot. And due to I think limitation of time, we will not take further questions, but I will ask each of the panelists to have a look at the chat box and please answer in case we missed any question to answer, to respond to. But finally, as a final word from each one of you, maybe in one or two lines, what do you think of the situation going into 2030, considering the current challenges we had in relation to your sector? So let me start with Dr. Dinesh, and we will go to each of the speakers. Final one or two sentences to finish.
Pardon, please, I was not able to hear it properly.
There's a final words from you to finish what you think of the current situation and going forward, how you look at the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for keeping this session and giving an opportunity to speak to industry people. Basically, I already mentioned the situation is encouraging. The demand for the dairy feed and the poultry feed is increasing day by day, and it is because of increased demand of animal protein or animal food by the human population. But fact remains is the way forward is not so easy because it is directly animal feed is directly competing with the human food. So we need to search more non-conventional ways and go for its usage, take the trials, and reduce the dependency on the conventional raw materials. If anybody will do like that, definitely will be able to cope up with the requirement of raw materials for their finished goods and reduce the cost of production of the final animal products also. So I wish all the best to everyone.
Thanks, Dr. Dinesh. Rajiv, over to you. Your last few words. Rajiv.
I think dairy industry is quite promising for us in terms of packaging. We are finding the quite good evaluation in terms of the rigid packaging take its own place with a period of time. We were not present for last 3 years, but now slowly the containers, jars, and bottles are happening up, taking its own segment. The important part here is that consumer is becoming more aware about what are the nutrition values are being there in the dairy segment, as mentioned by Sanjeev also. So it is playing its a vital role in terms of defining the packaging with the right shelf life and a nutrition value. So consumer is now getting aware about it. So we think that this is a very promising shift of the packaging sector in this particular. Yeah.
Thanks, Rajiv. Uday, over to you.
Yeah. 2030 is a challenge. Those who are...
You are breaking. Maybe you can switch off your video.
Ready?
You can switch off your video, please.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. 2030 is a challenge, but those who are gearing up to face the challenge will have the cake. Those who are depending on better genetics, better selection of animals, the animals which can give you more protein because the coming days are for protein. We need a lot of cheese, better productivity and margin. Those farmers will really succeed in 2030 and they will have the good fruit of their efforts in next 10 years. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. And now to Sanjeev, you, please. Sanjeev.
Yeah, Shiva. So I think it's the dairy industry is full of possibilities. What's critical from a industry perspective is to understand the consumer's requirements, and come good on that. Okay. If we do that, I think we're kind of rising up to the occasion and being able to not only take care of the expectations, but also setting the path to growth for us. So that's my view in the long term.
Okay, good words, Sanjeev. Now we are okay. Kumud, please. Kumud?
Sorry, I was on mute. So I would say always, like, hope is something which is always there. And I'm very hopeful for the dairy industry because the kind of regulatory reforms, what's happening up, and the kind of the quality oriented stuffs what we are doing, and the positive note which we are moving ahead of, because there I can see a vision that we are looking towards increasing the production of the milk quantity. And there has been if we have a look at the FAA report, there has been a steady growth which is happening up in the India milk production sector. So when there is more production, there is more flourishness, and definitely there will be more thing to come up into this sector, and that makes me very much hopeful for this particular sector as well.
Thanks, Kumud, for your nice words. And finally, now I think Anup, you're the last one.
So I will break my thing up into a macro and a micro. So on a macro basis, the demand. So we are humans. And as human population grows, so does calorific demand. So calorific demand is not going anywhere other than going up. So that's the beauty of it. Now, the demand for calories happens in places where population is growing. As God and everybody else around us would have it, that the production of dairy solids actually is not happening where calories are growing. So production of solids is happening in places where there's abundant land, and consumption is happening where there's abundant people. Unfortunately, both of them are not connected. Now we come to the microstructure, and the microstructure is that this disparity between the origin and the destination, as much as our politicians would not like to see it happen, is integrating markets around the world. So that's the shift, which did not happen in the first 5 years. And in the last 5 to 7 years, you will see the prices, supply, demand, all of these dynamics are leading to a very interesting, very insightful convergence of things. Now, the second side of that, so when convergence happens, it's good for the consumer and it's good for the producer as well, because there's a line of sight into availability, price, and value. Now, the second part is we just went through a pretty significant exposure of vulnerabilities in our supply chains through the pandemic. We have learned our weaknesses, we have learned our strengths, and I think we should not forget these learnings and employ them in our business looking forward. Expect a lot of volatility. Volatility, I think, in my view, is just starting. With all the stimulus spending each government is going to do, it's going to dramatically impact and change the fabric of how price, currency, interest rates, cost, hurdle rates are discovered and managed. We have barely seen the starting point of that. So expect volatility. The good part is that with the convergence of supply, with the convergence of the origin and the destination, price and managing price is actually becoming easier. So it's a good time. It's a great time to be in the market.
Thanks, Anup. I think good word actually to finish off. I will not actually take time to wrap up now for each and every, because you already have given your last points to finish off. But just to give my final things, and I can concur with most of the things that have been mentioned, like 2030. And I initially started with having gotten into a roller coaster ride. So it will remain, it may or may not be a roller coaster ride in leading up to 2030. But like Anup mentioned, volatility is going to be there. We need to see how we can manage the situation and possibly link to that the supply chain in terms of upstream, what we understood from Dr. Dinesh and Kumud, and also in terms of Uday for genetics, quality, and the feed side. So clearly, these are some of the challenges we need to look at, and possibly COVID might have given some opportunity to have a rethink or refresh button on that, how to reset that things in a way that we would be better prepared for the future, and possibly looking at in a way, sustainability is going to be a major factor. So we talked about packaging. I think clearly that would be be remaining a major factor in terms of food wastage or packaging wastage coming in, how we can navigate those challenges. And finally, looking at the consumer part, which Sanjeev talked about in terms of looking at different kind of traction changes coming in, sorry, the trends coming in the market, and how we can look at better tapping markets through different channels, how to serve the consumers better. So we do hope that we will have a good, better way to reach to 2030. The demand, of course, we are looking at strong, but there will be some kind of up and down. How we can navigate that in a better way. I think that's how we can be in a better position for all the stakeholders in the value chain. That's it from my side. Prachi, over to you. And I still am thankful to the audience and the speakers for their final words and also giving good insights. To the audience, we tried maximum in the limited time to answer. Please bear with us in case we are not able to give you a response. But I have actually requested, so Prachi, if possible, maybe you can send the speakers the questions which are not answered, so they can answer to the person who has given the question. Thank you. Thank you all. Prachi.
So, thank you so much, Shiva, and all my speakers to give your valuable time to us and for this informative session. I would definitely request all my speakers, because there has been many questions which we couldn't take on because of the time limit. So we will be sending you these questions via email, and if you can respond to us, we will be sharing it with our audience. And we will be making the report of this webinar, and we will be sharing it again with everyone in 2 weeks' time. So thank you so much again, Shiva, and all my speakers. And thank you, audience, for being there with us. And we hope to see you in our next webinar. Thanks to our sponsors, the strategic sponsors, Merck, and also the session sponsor, Reliance Industries. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Each time there is a contamination in food or beverages, the public is made aware. What they don't see is you, mitigating risks every day, taking difficult decisions and making our food as safe as possible. Because you take your job as seriously as we do. With over 350 years experience in highly regulated industries, we understand the importance of reliability and efficiency in your lab. So be it to verify existing methods, stay on top of changing regulations, or to adopt the newest technologies, you can find it all on sigmaaldrich.com. Tailored products for each step of your workflow available on our website. We have products that are suitable for microbial and analytical needs in the crucial step of sample preparation. For example, catchers for pesticide analysis on difficult sample matrices like leafy greens. We have solutions for the most routine sample analysis to advanced genetic detection, such as the Assurance GDS for rapid pathogen detection, often used to test for E. coli in beef.